This whole notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
Jim, actually, I have to honestly say, I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English. It reveals your cosmopolitan bias to a shocking degree that in your mind, no, this is an amazing moment.
Not exactly very elegant, if you know what I mean. Media reaction to the White House immigration plan. Some of these requirements were in place about a century ago. To the Capitalistpig hedge fund manager Jonathan Hoenig, National Review editor Richard Lowry, on if a merit-based system would work. Rich ended with you. It has worked, does work in other countries, including the aforementioned Australia and Canada. But what did you think of this whole back and forth?
Yeah, we are one of the few advanced countries that does it this way, that just lets people in and then lets their relatives in and then lets their relatives of their relatives in with very little thought of what makes sense for our 21st century economy and for our national interest. And I thought Miller was exceptionally good against Acosta. It was weird to see two advocates. Miller's actually paid to be an advocate. Acosta's paid to supposedly be objective, something he fails at. But you look at India, there are 125 million people who speak English in India. So the idea that if English is part of your requirement, that you're only going to have people from Britain and Australia is nonsense.
It veered off course into this, again, all the charges of racism and gerrymandering here. But, Jonathan, the end result is other countries have in place a system where those who want to get into their countries legally have to be beneficial or seem to be beneficial to the country they're going to, right?
Well, this plan, Neil, cuts legal immigration. I mean, and so it's not even a question of curtailing so-called illegal immigration. That is the Trump administration's expressed goal here, is to cut legal immigration. And I think it's their version, Neil, it's the GOP's version of the command control economy, right? They want to keep people working, I don't know, it's not on the farm anymore, in the fields or whatnot. They want to keep the proletariat working. In fact, Stephen Miller talked specifically about minorities and low-skilled, etc. So he wants to push up wages and save jobs, so-called, by restricting legal productive immigration. This is a terrible economic choice long-term.
We'll still be averaging 1 million immigrants coming into this country, either through visas or green cards, which is more than any other country on earth.
Based on Steve Miller's criteria. So what is going to be that merit, Neil?
You'd rather keep it open-based, open-ended, no limits, no provisos, nothing?
Well, it's always a red herring, Neil. I mean, the right says they have a problem with entitlements, and that's why they're against immigration. So why not tackle the entitlements? You talked about a generation or 100 years ago, Neil. None of these entitlements that the immigrants supposedly come here for were in place 100 years ago. So it's always about entitlements. It's always about terrorism.
I could flip it around and say the left is all about just trying to keep this to be some sort of a human and humane kind of story. I look at it again, Rich, as do you want to know what benefit we as a country get of the people who come here? To help them, help us, all works out.
Right. I mean, I would love to eliminate eliminate the entitlement state as it exists. That's a fantasy. It's never going to happen. And what's happening now is you have a flood of low-skilled immigrants who are, at the margins at least, suppressing the wages of lower-skilled native and legal immigrant workers who are already here. So why are we doing that? Let's instead cut back a little bit and emphasize skill and higher-end
But what if on the higher end, to Jonathan's point, if you have a lot of citizens of this country with engineering or advanced degrees, and a lot of these tech companies want those jobs to go to lower paid foreigners who come into this country. They have the same skill set, but they don't have to pay them as much.
Well, I think the sort of temporary visas are a very bad idea, because it allows companies to basically have their hooks into those workers who don't have a lot of other options and to undercut American workers. But look, there is a small economic benefit to immigration. And what happens is you suppress the wages of people further down the income scale. That's good for consumers. That's good for capital. And some of that benefit is redistributed upwards. But it might be wiped out from the fiscal cost of lower-end immigrants. Education, health care, welfare, and all the rest of it.
Well, I think we should just have everyone then back on the farm. Let's get rid of all foreign immigrants. Then we get up 100% employment. No, I mean, the point is
I
that...
don't understand what the point is.
Well, The point is that the immigrants that you come in as criticizing people for pushing down wages, they are productive. I mean, you can get a job in this country being a greeter, being a full-time greeter at a store like Walmart because of the immigrant labor. So you say, oh, immigrants make a marginal economic benefit to this country. That's just patently false. In fact, the more immigration, the more beneficial to this country. They
well, Jonathan,
trade,
wouldn't you
they
look
produce.
for skill sets that could not only help this country, but also advance those trying to get to this country? What's wrong with being a little selective so it could be a win-win? That's kind of what this approach is.
Who selects, Neil? I think that's the whole point.
But someone
Who
has to
selects what
select.
is beneficial?
Unless you can have totally open borders, you have to select. We are selecting now. There's a much greater demand to come to the United States of America than we are fulfilling at this moment. So by your standards, you're a terrible restrictionist who's preventing people from realizing the great economic gains they could have here. We could let 10 million people come every year if we had totally open borders.
Let me ask you,
yeah, well, there you go.
Why don't we?
Because there would be an enormous economic and cultural dislocation from
remember,
that. And
I think,
guys,
because we've had all these,
except for
guys, if you can refresh my memory, the catalyst for a lot of this was originally the tech CEOs who said we don't have enough American-born engineers and mathematics majors and that type of expertise. That's why we rely on those from India, some of these other countries, and that's the way we want to go. And this was the genesis for that.
Well, Neil, I don't know if it's tech entrepreneurs or whether it's anyone else, but the fact of the matter is that
These tech
immigrants
companies say they can't find these people. They just can't find them.
Well, and there's a benefit for them for hiring foreign people, Neil. I mean, there's no such thing as a right to a job. And to be honest, if an American can't compete
but the
with
only
a
way they can hire
foreign-born
them
immigrant,
is if they get their green cards or something acceptable
so I agree. I agree with our guest. Let's have 10 million immigrants to this country,
well, there you go.
And the economics.
There's no support for that. No one would ever vote for that.
Right.
That's a libertarian
certainly
fantasy.
Not from the president.
If you
the president wants to keep the entitlement state. Why doesn't he address that?
If you believe in markets, you should agree that if there's more labor supply, wages are going to go down. So you're advocating a policy that reduces wages of lower-income people in this country for some small economic benefit that's redistributed upwards.
They get better jobs. That's your whole point. You want to keep the proletariat working in the farms.
No,
their wages are suppressed. They get better jobs.
What are you talking about? Working on the farms? You have people in all sorts of sectors, construction and other things, where you have lower-skilled workers who have to compete with immigrants who are imported from overseas that we choose to import. Let's choose to import.
Guys, I wish I had more time, and I do want to extend this debate at another time here, but we don't have to worry too much. I know you're concerned, Jonathan, because the likelihood of passage here doesn't look good. But
it's just for the base. It's red meat for the base.
It's red meat for the base. Okay.